The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. To freeze or not to freeze, which payments could have been frozen by the White House and the judge's last-minute move to block it. Then migration arrests and deportations continue. How ICE under the Trump administration compares to its predecessor's final year. And could TikTok survive in the United States? Which companies are willing to take on the troubled social media app if a deal can be reached in the next 2 months? This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Breaking news as we come on the air. A federal judge has now temporarily blocked President Trump's administration freeze on federal grants and loans. Trump had ordered federal agencies to suspend some payments until they can review each program with the Office of Management and Budget. The lawsuit was filed by attorneys general from California and New York. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer also called for the order to be struck down.
This decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional.
The White House did offer clarification to the order this afternoon that not all payments are being paused and that the freeze would be limited in scope. Making her White House press briefing debut today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explained what is safe.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause.
It's important to note state agencies have reported that they cannot access Medicaid portals online right now. Press Secretary Leavitt confirmed the outages, but also said that no payments have been affected. The White House expects Medicaid to be back online shortly. Russ Vought, President Trump's nominee for director of the Office of Management and Budget, is expected to advance to Senate floor votes either later this week or early next. Democrats seek to block his nomination. Vought also served as director of OMB in Trump's first term. And giving you a live look over Buffalo, New York, as residents around the Great Lakes in the Northeast are bracing right now for more snow. Forecasters saying near whiteout conditions in some areas are expected. Strong snow squalls are possible tonight and into tomorrow in that region. The system predicted to bring multiple inches, possibly up to a foot or more in the state of Maine. And a look ahead to tomorrow. The storm system that brought rain and snow to Southern California will bring heavy snow to the mountains in Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. As the system moves east, heavy rains are set for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The storm does bring a threat of flash flooding. And less than a week after a terrifying shooting at Antioch High School outside of Nashville, students are asked to return to the class for the first time. This as they continue to mourn the teen who was killed in the school cafeteria there just last week. 16-year-old Jocelyn Correa Escalante. And here you can see a memorial that continues to build in her honor. Many students today chose not to return to class and instead organized a protest advocating for safer schools. And you can see here students holding signs demanding change to the state's gun laws, while others advocated for metal detectors. We're told that since the shooting, the school has installed a weapons detection system that can detect prohibited items using advanced sensors and AI, and that a third school resource officer has been added to the high school. There is a new border wall having success keeping unlawful entry into the country down, but it's not necessarily where you'd expect. In Halton, Maine, on the border with Canada, the U.S. Border Patrol has placed concrete barriers to stop vehicles from crossing into the United States. On Facebook, the U.S. BP says between 2023 and 2024, unlawful vehicle traffic increased 250%. But since the barriers have been put in place, illegal traffic has declined by 92%. Meanwhile, according to the latest numbers out of immigration Customs Enforcement. An additional 1,100 arrests were conducted yesterday. During President Biden's final year in office, ICE averaged 311 arrests a day. But as the White House celebrates the arrests, GOP lawmakers are calling for some mayors in Democratic cities to answer for policies they say interfere with the federal government's actions. Here's the latest from Christine Frizzell.
New York City, the latest target for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement crackdown, which has resulted in more than 4,000 arrests of undocumented migrants, including alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, behind this apartment takeover in Aurora, Colorado. One of its ringleaders reportedly arrested in the Bronx. The new Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accompanying ICE agents on their early morning raids.
We are getting the dirtbags off these streets.
New York City also targeted in another way. Its mayor, along with the mayors of Boston, Chicago, and Denver, asked to testify before the House Oversight Committee next month to answer for their city's sanctuary policies, which Chairman James Comer says hinder the ability of federal law enforcement officers to effectuate safe arrests and remove dangerous criminals from American communities.
Bringing a collaboration of state, local, federal authorities is the best way to attack any problem. And when I look at this, not having the Chicago Police Department working with the federal authorities to attack the worst of the worst, get these illegal migrants out of the community, it just defies all logic.
A common phrase from top border officials, the worst first, though the White House clarified that plenty of others will also be deported.
If you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
Now, one of President Trump's new executive orders lays out potential consequences for so-called sanctuary jurisdictions, which seek to interfere with federal immigration enforcement, saying he will undertake any lawful actions to block those jurisdictions from receiving federal funds. Amira?
And Christine, how are some of these local officials responding?
Well, they're saying it's not up to local officials to enforce federal immigration policy. Many of them also have state and local laws on the books that exist to protect some of these immigrants. They say they are bound to follow these laws.
A lot more to come on this topic, that's for sure. Live from Washington, D.C. with us here, Christine Frizzell. Thanks for that report. Oklahoma has taken a step towards requiring proof of a child's legal status in the United States when enrolling in public schools. The proposal passed the state's Board of Education in a 6-0 vote just today. Oklahoma's state superintendent proposed the measure and says it would not stop students without legal status from going to school, but would require districts to keep a tally. The measure now heads to the legislature for consideration. The village of East Palestine and railroad company Norfolk Southern have reached a $22 million settlement. The company says it covers all the village's claims from the 2023 train derailment that resulted in an intentional release of toxic vinyl chloride. Norfolk Southern has already paid more than $13 million to improve the village's train depot and water treatment plant, and more legal actions are pending. Developing now, the National Traffic Safety Board is investigating a Boeing flight from Lagos, Nigeria into Washington, D.C. last Friday. Several passengers were severely injured when the plane suffered sudden aircraft movement. 6 people were hospitalized. The flight had to turn around and did land safely back in Lagos. This as Boeing says their fourth quarter has taken a huge hit. The company reports a loss per share of $5.46. Reuters reports through LSEG data that's about a $4 billion loss and much higher than analyst expectations. Boeing has also lost nearly $12 billion this past year and $35 billion since a pair of fatal crashes in 2019. The White House delivering a statement direct from President Trump regarding the mysterious drones over New Jersey, something he vowed to get some answers on. He says, quote, "This was not the enemy."
After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says hobbyists and recreational drone pilots joined in over time because of the growing interest. It started back in November with hundreds of reports of low-flying large drones, some around sensitive military sites. The FAA imposed temporary flight restrictions in New Jersey and New York. The FBI had said there was no public safety risk or threat to national security. Coming up, the new White House press secretary points fingers at who's to blame for the rising costs of your morning omelet. Then, TikTok was spared 75 days, but the video sharing platform still needs a buyer. Coming up, the company who just submitted a proposal and what's not included in the deal. And later, a state backlash, what comfort food these residents say is too sweet to touch. Tonight, tracking soaring egg prices as Americans desperately await relief at the grocery store. The average price of a carton of eggs, $4.15. That's according to the latest released numbers from the month of December. And the AG department, they predict those prices are going to climb this year by another 20%. Shelves are bare in parts of the country, and many stores place limits on how many you can buy. A lot of that has to do with the latest bird flu outbreak, which started in 2022. The White House blaming the previous administration. Senate Democrats saying the Trump administration is going to make it worse.
The Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens, which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply, which is leading to the shortage.
I was in upstate New York talking about funding to stop the scourge of bird flu because eggs are $6. You hold back the funding that farmers need to do that, price will go up higher.
Tonight, day one of the Federal Reserve's Interest Rate Committee meeting has wrapped. Tomorrow, we can expect a decision from the Fed on any moves they intend to make. Economists and financial markets expect the Fed to leave rates untouched this time around. The Fed has signaled it needs to see more evidence that inflation is moving down before another cut takes place. In recent days, President Trump has publicly pressured the central bank to continue its cutting campaign. Lower interest rates make borrowing cheaper and can stimulate spending. TikTok has about 2 months to sell to a United States bidder after President Trump placed a 75-day hold on the ban inside the United States. And now there's growing interest from U.S. corporations. Microsoft appears to have renewed interest in acquiring the social media app. Microsoft was first in talks with TikTok during Trump's first term, but the negotiations collapsed when he left office. Last night, Trump spoke with reporters on Air Force One about any potential deals.
You spoke about, different companies bidding for it. You want them to bid for it. Are you talking about a bidding war?
I like bidding wars because you make your best deal. So if there's a bidding war, that's a good thing. But We have a lot of interest in it, in TikTok.
Who else besides
Because
Mike?
it's very cut, dry, it's very clear.
But there is another new TikTok proposal on the table. Perplexity AI has proposed a merger that would also give the U.S. government a 50% ownership stake. Jeff Harris has more on what is and is not in a possible deal.
This is actually the second proposal by Perplexity AI to merge with TikTok. ByteDance still hasn't responded to the first one, but a person familiar with the matter tells CBS News this new one was revised based off of feedback from the Trump administration.
David Schweidel, a marketing expert, tells us some view Perplexity AI as a bit of a challenger to Google.
The way in which people had been using Perplexity is as an alternative to Google search.
On January 18th, one day before the TikTok ban went into effect, Perplexity submitted a proposal to merge with TikTok, but ByteDance didn't respond. Schweidel says this latest proposal is a revised offer.
Perplexity, as kind of an AI developer, has put in a bid to have joint ownership of TikTok's U.S. assets.
This second proposal would create a new structure, merging Perplexity with TikTok's U.S. business. But the U.S. government would own up to half of that new structure once it makes an initial public offering of at least $300 billion.
So it would be a 50-50 split. Perplexity would own half the business. The U.S. government would own half of the business.
Rob Laka, a business professor, says, of the many interesting things about this proposal, one that stands out is that it wouldn't include TikTok's algorithm.
They said they don't need the algorithm. And so they're looking for the user base that TikTok has had, not the algorithm.
Plus, Laka believes the 50% share is worth keeping an eye on.
You would never want a 50-50 split between you and a Chinese entity, for instance, because who has the final say? Who gets that deciding vote?
Now, the Associated Press is reporting that under the proposed merger, ByteDance would not have to completely cut ties with TikTok, but it would have to give full board control to the United States. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
All right, Jeff, thank you. And coming soon to a Google map for you, next to you, the Gulf of America and Mount McKinley. Google Maps says they will change the names for Gulf of Mexico and Mount Denali on its website and app to reflect President Trump's executive order to rename both of them on official maps and federal communications. The Gulf of Mexico was initially named by Spain. Mexico used to control most of the coast until Texas became part of the United States in 1836. And Mount Denali in Alaska gained that name in 2015 when it was changed by then President Barack Obama. As of today, Google Maps still has the locations listed under their previous names. Florida is holding a special primary election today to fill 2 House seats held by former GOP representatives. Northwest Florida's 1st congressional district is open after Matt Gaetz resigned to move forward as Donald Trump's Attorney General nominee. While Gaetz took his name out of consideration, he did not come back to Congress. Northeast Florida's 6th congressional district is also open after Mike Waltz left to serve as National Security Advisor. The special general election in that case set for April 1st. Recall alert as we are learning about an upgrade to an October recall of Costco's Kirkland Signature Smoked Salmon. The FDA now classifies this as a Class 1 designation, meaning consuming the product could cause serious adverse health consequences or even death. The makers of the packages, Acme Smoked Fish Corporation, initially recalled the fish in October due to a listeria outbreak. So far, no illnesses have been reported, but if you do have it in your freezer, throw it away or return it immediately. A recent report shows veterans are at a 72% higher risk of suicide than those who have not served in our military. As reporter Liz Bonus explains, that's led one county to take a very direct approach.
I served in Vietnam and I was in the U.S. Army.
Veteran Mark Applegate told me he knows how important it is to interrupt that crisis time. He remembers the challenges of returning to civilian life.
We were isolated back then. We weren't treated the same way that we are today, thank goodness.
Mark and Mike Farmer now serve on the Butler County Veteran Services Board Suicide Prevention Committee. Both say isolation can raise a risk a veteran will take their own life.
We say 17 nationally die a day, veterans of suicide, 17 a day. But if you dive down locally, it's about a veteran every 3 days just in our county.
So to try and change those numbers, they launched a 24/7 suicide prevention hotline for veterans. They also stepped up veteran support programs, including those that interrupt immediate action that could lead to suicide.
We provide gun locks in our lobby. We go through hundreds of them.
And because the 2024 VA's annual National Veteran Suicide Prevention Report last year showed a slight spike in suicides among veterans under age 45, they put messaging about suicide in places younger veterans may hang out.
We printed coasters with the crisis line on it.
As for progress, Mike told me in the 2 years they've been tracking, it's been steady.
We did lose 7 in Butler County specifically in 2024. We lost 9 in Butler County in 2023.
The biggest barrier? Getting veterans to know it's okay to ask for help.
To me, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help, particularly when you're dealing with mental health.
That was Liz Bonis reporting. Tonight, a date set in a high-profile Hollywood feud. It ends with Us co-stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni are set to go to trial early next year in New York. The feud began during the film's August 2024 press tour as rumors of a falling out between Lively and Baldoni, who was also the film's director. In December, Lively filed a harassment complaint. Baldoni later filed a $400 million lawsuit against Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, alleging them of defamation and extortion. And coming up, what a Republican lawmaker in California is proposing to do to find funding for wildfire prevention. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin with a Republican in California who wants to move funding from controversial projects to wildfire prevention.
This bill is doing something that I think the Central Valley's been asking for a really long time.
Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo, who represents District 33, introduced Assembly Bill 267 last Wednesday. AB 267 is pushing for lawmakers to defund the yearly billion-dollar funded high-speed rail project and redirect those funds to prevent wildfires and help with water infrastructure projects.
These type of investments of prevention are necessary because we know the fires are going to come and continue to come.
For starters, she says her bill will help put crews on the ground year-round to help with forest management.
What I'm wanting to look at is where have those investments been made? How can we make those investments a reality and make sure that, years of spending is actually worth something, and that's something that the high-speed rail can't show.
Just a love. Once you get involved with chocolate, it becomes part of it. It's my life.
For Francis Cox Jr., the business of chocolate has been in the family for decades.
It all started in 1928 by my great my great aunt Dorothy.
Their factory is in Fall River, and for the past 10 years, the store here in Fairhaven has been a favorite among customers. But despite the popularity, Cox says business hasn't always been sweet.
Chocolate's at the highest price it's ever been.
And now another challenge. Governor Maura Healey's budget plan removes candy as an essential item, meaning the state's 6.25% sales tax could be added on.
I wasn't too wild about it, but it's just another challenge that we're going to have to, it's going to be negative on the consumer because we're going to have to go out just to charge for that.
It started as a knock at the door.
He didn't ask, he just told me what I needed doing.
Two men telling the victim, David, his roof had a hole in it and his foundation needed repair.
Did they pressure you into doing a lot of this stuff? It was all pressure.
David asked us not to show his face as he recounted the pushy tactics of brothers Patrick and Matthew McDonough.
I just am surprised at myself how easy it was for them to talk me into it.
For weeks, the McDonoughs kept asking David for money.
The excuse for the money was because they needed to get the materials.
But instead, prosecutors say the men were cashing the checks and pocketing the money.
It can happen to anyone.
There's now a sign on David's door with a warning, saying the last solicitors who came here ended up in federal prison.
The Super Bowl is right around the corner. Coming up, why what the players wear could give you the gambling edge in predicting the winner. For the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs, as the designated home team, have first pick on jersey colors, and they have chosen white as they face off against the Philadelphia Eagles. But did you know that the team who wears white as a uniform in the Super Bowl has historically had an advantage? In the 58 Super Bowls played, 37 teams wearing white have gone on to win the game with a success rate of 64% as compared to 36% for non-white jerseys. It could just be coincidence, but right now the Chiefs are the 1.5-point favorite to win. So we'll see what happens. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.